If Chloe wasn't here, I'd really think this was my home. She smiled brightly, her finger drawing a red mark along the rim of her wine glass. I watched her step closer, knowing clearly in my heart, she wanted to test my limits, and I had to let her expose her own flaw. I didn't answer. I was still holding a freshly washed plate. Kayla moved a step nearer and leaned on the counter. The smell of alcohol mixed with her perfume drifted over. She lowered her voice, "Does she understand you?" At that moment, footsteps came from upstairs. Chloe's voice called from the top of the stairs, "Kayla. You're still here." She turned with a smile, her expression instantly softened and became warm. "I'm talking to him, your boyfriend really can cook." Chloe didn't think much of it and only laughed, "Then eat more." In that instant, they looked like sisters from years ago, and at the same time like two women silently confronting each other. I knew a crack had already formed. Kayla was Chloe's childhood friend, they grew up together. Chloe was gentle and good at taking care of others, Kayla was outgoing and radiant, always liking to stand out. Their relationship was close, they even used a joint photo as their social profile picture. Chloe and I had lived together for 3 years, life was steady. Until Kayla started showing up here frequently. She said she wanted to avoid the empty apartment, and said, "Being with us feels like home." At first I didn't mind. She helped with cooking, kept Chloe company watching shows, and even brought dessert sometimes. But gradually, her smile, her glances, the closeness when she leaned in, all felt wrong. That night was only the beginning. Afterwards, she often knocked on our door during the day when Chloe was at work. "I forgot to take my coat. Can you help me check what's wrong with my computer? I was just passing by." Each time she appeared with an excuse, but every time she got closer. Once she stood at my door wearing a short coat with half a white sleep shirt sleeve showing. "I didn't bring my keys," she smiled, "Do you mind if I wait here for Chloe?" She sat on the sofa with her legs crossed while the TV flickered light. I tried to keep my distance, but could still feel the weight of being watched. "She's really lucky," she said suddenly. "To have you." "Don't joke." "I'm not." Her voice was very soft. "If she doesn't treasure you, I will." I froze. At that moment her eyes were almost naked. I turned to the kitchen and pretended to be busy. My hand trembled a little. That evening I told Chloe, "Kayla's been acting strange lately." She smiled briefly, "She's always like that, emotional. Don't be too sensitive." I tried to explain more but she interrupted, "She just lost her father, be a little more understanding." That, "be a little more understanding," felt like a cold stone dropped on my chest. In the following days I deliberately avoided Kayla. But she seemed to sense it and messaged more often. At first her messages were polite greetings, "Thanks for giving me a ride that day." Later they became, "Do you think I should cut my hair short?" And then there were photos, a mirror selfie at the gym, a dim bedroom profile shot. Each one carefully teetered between flirtation and innocence. I didn't reply. I just saved them. A week later, things really blew up. That night, I was about to sleep when Chloe suddenly rushed into the bedroom with her phone. "Kayla says you texted her at midnight." Her voice trembled. She showed me. On the screen was a string of messages I had never seen, "You look so beautiful today, I can't wait to see you again." The profile picture was mine, the tone was mine. I looked at those words like I was looking at someone else's crime. "Do you believe this?" I asked. Chloe's breath was uneven, her throat moved slightly. She said, "I don't know." I said nothing more. I went out onto the balcony and lit a cigarette. As the smoke rose, I realized, Kayla had already won halfway. The wind that night was cold. I watched the streetlights' shadows outside and thought of many things. When Chloe and I first got together, Kayla had smiled at me kindly and politely too. She helped Chloe move, the three of us squeezed into the new apartment. She got drunk and laughed at me, saying, "You must treat her well, she's too easy to be deceived." I never thought that years later, that sentence would turn into an ironic comment. The next morning I sat at the desk for a long time. I categorized and archived all screenshots, chat logs, and timestamps. I didn't know why I was doing it, I just instinctively wanted to keep evidence. It wasn't because I feared being misunderstood, but because of a premonition, I would eventually fight back. I named that folder Echo. It was the beginning of all the echoes between them, and it would be the seed of the ending. One night I sat at the desk holding my phone. Kayla's messages kept popping up, one after another. Each one was either unnaturally gentle greetings or provocations that made me uneasy. "Why didn't you reply today? I made dessert, I wanted you to try it." I didn't respond, only lowered my head to sort bills on the table, my fingers occasionally tapping the keyboard. I remembered how I used to be cornered. In high school, classmates fabricated that I stole homework and I stood on the podium flushed as if I would burst, while no one believed me. In college, a roommate posted photos of me drunk to the group, and the whole dorm laughed. That feeling of being misunderstood and isolated washed over me like a tide. Kayla was like a ghost, moving through those familiar emotions around me. Every time she approached, I forced myself to remain calm. That day she sat on the sofa wearing Chloe's sweater, hair falling over her shoulders, and said softly, "You know, sometimes you look at me more tenderly than you look at her." I didn't respond. I glanced at her for a second, then turned my gaze to the kitchen. The dripping of the faucet seemed to buy me time to think. I realized then that endurance was not cowardice but a necessary defense. In the following days Kayla's appearances increased. Every time she came over she could find a reason, left a book, borrowed a bowl, just wanted to chat. She sat on the sofa, closer than I liked, her fingers lightly touching my arm then immediately withdrawing, as if testing boundaries. Each time I remained calm, handed her a glass of water, my tone steady, "Drink this." She smiled harmlessly, but I could sense the probing. Every look, every laugh, every tone reminded me, I was a pawn, she was the manipulator. One day, recalling the past, I discovered a pattern. Whenever I was shamed, I chose to endure and observe rather than act rashly. In high school I was falsely accused of stealing homework, in college I was shamed by photos, at work I was misunderstood. I learned two things: don't let emotions control you, and be 10,000 times colder than your opponent. This time I applied those lessons to the situation at hand. The more Kayla came near, the more I kept my distance, the more she tested me, the more I documented. Every message she sent I quietly screenshotted and annotated the time. Every time she got close I watched her movements and expression carefully. Every test I replayed in my head and analyzed her pattern. One night Chloe suddenly said she would be late returning home. I knew she was giving Kayla and me an opportunity. I pretended to be busy sorting files in the living room. Kayla sat on the sofa and said softly, "Why do you always look at me like that? Don't you trust me?" I sat opposite her, holding the remote, and said, "No, you don't respect boundaries." She was taken aback and bit her lip lightly, as if she hadn't expected that response. At that moment I felt a surge of power, not anger, but a calm, precise control. I knew that every moment of endurance, every observation, was storing up chips for the final counterattack. Late at night Kayla finally left. I shut the door and stood in the empty living room, thinking of those nights I had been shamed, the loneliness and helplessness of nobody believing me. This time was different. I had learned to record, analyze, and lay plans. Every detail was under control. I didn't angrily confront Kayla or question Chloe then. I waited, for Kayla to expose herself, for the truth to surface, and when it did, I would respond calmly and completely. That weekend Chloe told me she was going to her mother's house. I nodded and pretended not to care. Less than 10 minutes after she left, the doorbell rang. Kayla stood at the door, her coat half open to reveal a silk camisole. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes shone with excitement and nervousness. "We need to talk," she said softly, as if pronouncing a verdict. "About you and Chloe." I glanced at her and replied calmly, "Come in." She walked into the living room and sat down, her gaze cutting over my every move like an eagle. "She doesn't understand you," she lowered her voice. "She's still hung up on her ex. She never fully loved you. So you're here to teach me how to do it?" I asked, my voice still calm. She smiled. "She doesn't deserve you. I'm the one who understands you." I said nothing and slowly sat across from her, my fingers tapping the table. "You're not angry?" she asked, half surprised. I smiled faintly. Anger doesn't solve anything. Then I began to play the folder I had carefully prepared, projecting onto the screen Kayla's past photos, messages, videos, and evidence of her manipulative behavior toward Chloe and other exes. She froze, her lips trembling. I calmly narrated, "Every time you tested me, sent messages, got close, provoked. I recorded it. You think Chloe didn't see? You think no one noticed your methods of manipulating others?" Kayla's face shifted from confidence to panic. She instinctively remembered all the behaviors I had marked and recorded. This can't be," she muttered, her voice shaking. I didn't pay attention to her. I laid out the timelines and evidence one by one in front of her eyes. Every message's timestamp and content. You can replace this text with any text you wish. You can either write in this text box or paste your own text here, try different languages and voices. Change the speed and the pitch of the voice. You can even tweak the SSML, speech synthesis markup language, to control how the different sections of the text sound. Click on SSML above to give it a try. Enjoy using text-to-speech. Every approach and excuse recorded in detail. Testimonies from Chloe's mother and friends revealing Kayla's past manipulation of Chloe's exes. Proof that I never crossed any lines. Kayla began to panic, clutching at her camisole, her gaze darting everywhere. How did you get these?" she almost screamed. "You left them yourself," I answered calmly. "The more you tested, the more I recorded. Everything you did is in your own evidence." She retreated to the corner of the sofa, her voice growing small. I just wanted. Wanted what? I stepped forward, my gaze icy. To destroy the trust between me and Chloe. To replace her, right? She shook her head weakly, unable to defend herself. I projected the last photo onto the screen, a photo Kayla once tried to fake to make Chloe's exes misunderstand her, even telling them Chloe was unfaithful. Her lips trembled, voice like a candle in the wind. You can't do this." "Why not?" I said, still cold. "You've been doing this for a long time. Now it's time for you to face consequences." She began to beg, her voice sharp, "Don't tell Chloe. I promise I won't come again." I stopped and looked at her without any wavering. "If you ever try to sabotage our trust again, you won't get a chance to explain." Her body began to shake, tears rolling down her cheeks. She knelt on the floor, hands clutching the hem of her shirt. I beg you. I promise I'll never." I watched her total collapse, helplessness and fear, and felt no pity, only calm victory. I turned to the other side of the room and picked up my phone. "I'll make sure you understand what you've done before Chloe comes home." I sent Chloe a brief message, "Kayla is here. She left all the evidence herself. Please take a look." Less than 5 minutes later Chloe returned. She showed no surprise and walked to the door holding her phone. Kayla looked up and when she saw Chloe's eyes she was frozen. Chloe said quietly, "See, it's all here." Kayla gasped and her pleading faded into a dry, trembling sound. You can't, this is mine." I did not respond, standing quietly on the side with a steady, clear gaze. Chloe stepped forward and held up her phone, displaying every message Kayla had sent, every fake message and every provocation. Kayla's face went completely pale, her legs gave out and she collapsed to her knees. "How many people have you ruined?" Chloe asked coldly, her eyes sharp as knives. Kayla couldn't answer and only begged, I I promise. I'll never again. I went up beside her and said in a low voice, you wanted to manipulate others. Now all you have left is begging and fear. Do you know what that feels like? It's the same as what you gave others. Kayla trembled, tears soaking her face, letting out a helpless wail. Chloe didn't look at me, she took my hand and pulled me close. I felt her tense shoulders slowly relax. Night fell quiet. Kayla curled up in the sofa corner, pleading and terrified. She finally understood she had no way out. Chloe and I stood together and watched her collapse, feeling nothing but calm and clarity. After that, Kayla never came back. All her tests, provocations, and sabotage were exposed by calm, rational revelation. Chloe's trust returned to me, and for the first time I truly felt the power of controlling the situation, protecting myself, and letting a malicious person reap what she had sown.